Hey y'all, welcome back. Today's video we are still going through the Baby Whisperer Solves All Your Problems book, and we are looking at chapter 7, which is sleep problems after the first year of life. She's mainly looking at the second and third year of life, so usually when your child is between 1 and 3 years old, any sleep problems that may arise there. But I think it really can cover even up to 5 years old if you are having sleep problems with your child at that age as well. What I love about this chapter is Tracy really starts off with a lot of statistics. She starts off talking about several different studies that have been conducted with parents and their opinions on their child's sleep habits. And from these studies, Tracy concludes that most parents are in denial about their child's sleep problems, and that a lot of sleep problems do continue to happen past infancy. I think a lot of times we have this idea in our mind that after our baby isn't a baby anymore, then they should know how to sleep. But if we never actually take the time to sit down with them and teach them how to sleep, then we shouldn't expect them to be able to be good sleepers by the time we expect them to sleep well. The main problem she points to at the beginning of the chapter is that bedtimes are often very late. The average bedtime for babies and toddlers was around 9 p.m. when parents were surveyed across the country about what time their child goes to bed. And that's just way too late. Tracy actually recommends that if your child is under 5 years old, the perfect bedtime is somewhere between 7 and 7:30, 8 at the very latest. Some kids even will do better if they're put to bed at 6 or 6:30. It really depends on your child. Some kids need 13 hours of sleep a night, some only need 11, and some can do the basic 12 hours, but really your child should not be getting any less than 11 hours of sleep. And with this study, she also points out that the wake up time on average is usually around 7 a.m. for all of these kids. So even the kids going to bed at 9 are waking up at 7. And if we do the math there, they're only getting 10 hours of sleep. Losing that 1 hour of sleep every single night definitely can impact their temperament. It can impact their personality. It doesn't necessarily cause aggressive problems, but it does aggravate behavioral issues in our children. So even though it might not seem like much, and 9 o'clock might seem not that late by your standards, it's really important for our children to be getting more sleep than what they are getting. At this age, anything after 1 year of age, essentially Tracy talks about how accidental parenting is still a huge issue. Parents may not necessarily be rocking to sleep or bouncing to sleep or putting their child in their car to sleep like they used to when they were younger, but even just having to sit in the room with your child if they're unable to fall asleep without you there, or children falling asleep in different places other than their bed and then being put to bed, those are kind of the main two issues she pinpoints. So if a child falls asleep watching TV in the evening and that's the only way you can get them to bed, and then you carry them into bed and tuck them in, and they're not falling asleep in bed, that still counts as some form of accidental parenting where your child just doesn't know how to sleep and go to bed on their own. We're actually, as the parents, putting them to sleep still, when at this age they should be able to do it themselves. So we're going to look at some general issues that parents may have at this time, and then sleep strategies for how you can solve those issues and prevent them from worsening or happening ever again. So my daughter is actually only 14 months right now. She'll be 15 months in a few weeks, but I sleep trained her at 4 months with the pick up put down method. So these issues haven't really been in my experience, but most of her sleep strategies are things that she's been talking about parents implementing since the beginning. So I do have experience with these strategies. The general issues that your child may be experiencing may be things like delaying bedtime, like always needing to read another book, have another glass of water, have a snack. Oh wait, even if they're old enough that they're potty trained, they may be delaying bedtime to use the bathroom. And it may be things that seem good, but they're really just delaying going to bed. Another general issue might just be needing a parent to sit with them until they fall asleep, needing a parent to lay with them to fall asleep. And then nighttime wakings are another huge issue that usually happens after a child is 2, when they're able to get out of their crib or bed and leave their room and walk around the house and maybe even go bother their parents a little bit. Those are kind of the three main issues she talks about in this chapter. Of course, anything could be a sleep issue. If you are unhappy with any part of the way your child goes to sleep, hopefully these strategies that we'll talk about shortly will help with that, even if it's not something she specifically points to in her book. Some things that cause these general issues can be developmental leaps. So if your child is closer to 1 and just started walking or just started to be more mobile and more active, that can definitely cause disturbances in their sleep and possibly more nighttime wakings. Older siblings can also wind your child up during the day. I've noticed this when I go to my friends' houses who have multiple children. When their youngest goes down for a nap, they seem more reluctant because they have siblings that they've been playing with, and it's not necessarily that the older siblings are doing bad things to the child, but even just having fun and being there and making them run around and do lots of things that they usually weren't doing before they hit this age can be really exhausting and overstimulating and make it more difficult for your child to fall asleep. Also, new activities like going to a play group, starting preschool, things like that where children are more social can be a little scary and definitely affect their dreams, affect their ability to go to sleep, but also, depending on your child's temperament, it can wind them up as well, make them more excited, make them less want to be in a room by themselves at night. Also, a big one that she talks about is that your child learns how to manipulate around age 1, and they just continue to get better at it as they get older. And often this manipulation can be mistaken easily for separation anxiety. I do notice that a little bit with my daughter, where her separation anxiety just kind of melted away into trying to manipulate me and her father. And luckily that is something that the Baby Whisperers helped me recognize, so I don't mistake her cries for separation anxiety. I know when she is trying to manipulate us, so that can be a tricky thing to navigate, especially because our emotions are involved with that as well. If your child has never been able to sleep on their own through the night, then that problem will just be aggravated even more so as they grow older and get all of these skills. And another big issue is if your child does wake up at night and physically comes to you, whatever your response is to that. If you are making it appealing for them to wake up and come to your room, and maybe they get to climb into bed or snuggle or have a conversation or a quick snack or something like that, then you're kind of teaching them that it's fun to wake up in the middle of the night. So those are just our general issues that Tracy kind of lays out in this chapter. She does go into specific scenarios a lot, lots of stories about people who have struggled with these issues. So if I just listed anything that you are specifically struggling with, then I definitely recommend you read about it more in the book, more in depth. But right now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to jump into her sleep strategies for how we can fix basically any sleep issue at this age, even if she hasn't talked about it specifically in the book. The number one strategy is obviously to have a routine. At this point, that easy routine is going to look a little different, especially as your child ages. It doesn't always have to be eat, activity, sleep. It could be eat, activity, eat, sleep, really any order, but you just want to make sure that your child is developing healthy eating habits and that their activity is not too stimulating for them to be able to do the S in easy, which is sleep. If you have any concerns about your child's eating, then you can look at my chapter 4 video, which is all about solids from 6 months and beyond. There's a lot of tips in there even for older children. But Tracy gives a good example in the book of a mother who was struggling to put down her son at night, even though he usually was pretty calm. And he just hit a certain point in his age where he was more sociable, more excitable, and he would still have a bath before bed. But it turned out that that bath was actually starting to wind him up more. So he had been doing that bath for years at that same time every day. But in order to protect his sleep and to continue healthy sleep habits, his mom had to come up with a solution where he actually got to take a bath earlier in the day, and that just actually really affected his sleep. So even if you are doing a routine and you've been really consistent with that and you have that nailed down, you really need to take another look at it as your child ages. If you do start to see sleep issues arise, the first thing that you should look at is your child's activities and the way that they've progressed. It's really hard when we're with our children every single day to look back and see like, oh, they just had this huge mental leap where they can actually play with other children and they really enjoy it. So if we just remind ourselves of that, of how much they've changed, and we look at the activities that are winding them up, the things that they might enjoy more, the things that they've been starting to do that are new, we just have to make sure that those things aren't impacting their sleep. And just be smart and know your child and see if you can rearrange your routine to help protect their sleep and keep it healthy. There's not really a specific fix for this. You really have to know your child and you have to know what's best for them. And even though it might not be convenient to move things around, we just need to be creative and come up with solutions that work best for our child. So we need to not put ourselves first in those situations, but put them in their sleep first. Another sleep strategy is to make the bedtime ritual consistent and to use it to anticipate problems that may come up. At this point, there's going to be more to your bedtime ritual than there has been when your child was younger. When my daughter was very young, I remember reading to always include a book story time in the bedtime ritual. Parents say to do it from like 2 or 3 months old. And I tried it and I was like, there's no way like this is good for my daughter to like prop her up on my lap when she's 3 months old and try to read a book to her. And even now, as she's 14 months, I don't read a book to her as part of our routine. It just doesn't make sense to do that. At her age, we'll read books during the day a lot, but she actually can get pretty wound up from books still. But as your child grows older and is actually more able to sit still and relax and cuddle up for a story, you might need to adjust your routine to include a very specific amount of story time. Don't let them manipulate you into more books, of course, but just know that your child might actually really need that extra cuddling at this age. Even though when they were 6 months, you know, we were really the ones cuddling them, but now that they might be 16 months, they might really want that time to sit with you, especially if, for example, dad puts your baby to bed and he's been at work all day. They might really cherish that time. So make sure you might even need to keep your ritual, you might need to start it a little earlier just to allow time for your child to really bond with the parent who's putting them to bed. But use it to anticipate issues that may arise. Stalling is a huge problem at this point, so you don't want to have too long of a ritual. You want it to be very consistent. You want to stick to it. And you don't want your child to try to manipulate their way out of the routine. Tracy also gives an example here of a child who kept asking for water in the middle of the night. So before bed, the parents put that into the bedtime ritual and made a point to put a glass of water by their bed and told them that they can drink it at any point, and that actually stopped him from getting out of bed in the middle of the night. So if the night before your child had any issue, you can really take that time during the bedtime to sit with your child and try to fix that issue before bed so it doesn't happen again. Another thing Tracy has said a lot in the previous sleep chapters is never rush in when you hear your child cry. At this age especially, they can wake up, they can talk to themselves, they might even play in their crib for a little bit just in the middle of the night. And that doesn't mean we should go in and stimulate them more. We should only go into their room when they have a genuine cry and something is actually wrong. It's also very important for us to learn our child's mantra cry. So if you haven't learned it before, try to assess it now. There are lots of times that my daughter wakes up in the middle of the night because she's lost her lovey. It's just in the corner of the crib and she just hasn't found it yet. It's hard because I'll look at her on the video camera and see the lovey and see her and see how far away she is, and I just want to go in and hand it to her and then leave. But I've never done that before because I'm absolutely terrified that it will completely wake her up, that it might overstimulate her, that she might think that I came in to play with her or that it's morning time. I just don't go into her room at night. She does not expect me to, but she does do a mantra cry during that time. And even if she does not find her lovey, she is able to go back to sleep on her own. But it's just difficult for me. I know that it's best that I do not go in there, but it's just difficult to know that I can fix the problem. If she does actually throw her lovey outside of her crib, she will have a genuine cry. And she sounds like she's in distress. That usually doesn't happen in the middle of the night. It usually only happens right when she's going down for bed or for a nap. And so at that point I will come in and I will hand her her lovey, and she's usually standing up in her crib. So I do the put down, a pick up, put down, and I lay her back down in her crib with her lovey, and then I immediately leave. And she's never used that to manipulate me in any way because I've been consistent in not interacting with her. But I am aware that it's a genuine cry and that it's a problem that I can fix. And I think that definitely helps her feel more secure in bed, that if she ever were to lose her lovey or be afraid, that mom would come and help. And like I just mentioned with pick up, put down, at this point, it's only put down. So if you are having trouble putting your child to sleep, putting them back to bed after they wake up in the middle of the night, or even extending their nap times, you should be doing put down. So I talked about that mostly in my last video, chapter 6, that's titled Pick Up, Put Down. There's a whole section on how to do put down with babies who are 8 to 12 months, and essentially past 12 months it's going to look the same. Never pick up your child at this point. They're just too heavy. It's just going to be difficult, and especially if they have not been able to sleep well on their own, it's just going to probably perpetuate issues, especially if you have rocked or bounced or held your child to sleep. Picking them up during the pick up, put down is only going to make them more aggravated because they'll expect that instead of being put back down. I don't know if Tracy has like kind of a cap on when put down stops working, but it does seem that she recommends it during this age if your child is having trouble actually falling asleep, if you've been relying on a prop to put them to sleep and you need to get them off that prop, then I think it's definitely worth a shot at any age. If you have tried controlled crying, or you have some sort of trust that's been broken between you and your child is afraid to go to sleep at night, your child might be afraid of their crib or bed, or they might just be afraid to be alone and in their room, then before you do put down, you should reestablish that trust by sleeping on a blow-up bed in their room. Tracy does talk about that as being a part of pick up, put down at 8 to 12 months. But after a while, when your child is older, probably closer to 2 or 3, you should start off with the blow up bed so that they're comfortable before you do put down with them. And if your child is over the age of 2 and they've never slept in their own crib, and now you're trying to get them to do that, Tracy just says it's better to skip the crib stage and go straight to a big kid bed. It's usually better to wait longer, maybe closer to age 3 before they're in a toddler bed. The earliest you could do it is age 2, and if you need to, then go ahead and do it. If your toddler is climbing out of their crib in the middle of the night or in the morning, and they are close to age 2, then you can also make the transition to a big kid bed at that point as well. It might seem counterintuitive to give your child a bed that they can easily get in and out of, but it's really an exciting and fun moment for them to have a cool bed that they like. And so Tracy recommends that before you do that, you take them shopping for a new bedspread for their bed that they like. So they get to pick it out, and then they actually will enjoy being in their bed. Their bed will be a new fun thing. And that can help prevent your toddler from getting out of their crib at night. It's really great to show your child that bed isn't always just for sleep. You know, they can sit in it and read, they can play a little bit in their beds. And that helps a lot when you've had broken trust or when your child has had a fear of their bed or of their crib. Another sleep strategy she lists is to not let fear dominate the way you structure your child's sleep. So especially if your child has always been a bad sleeper, maybe they had really bad colic in the first few months of their life, and you're just kind of afraid of their crying, and maybe you've been relying on a prop for a while, and you're just afraid to change. Don't let that fear dominate. I remember when I was going to do pick up, put down, my daughter was passy dependent, and so I was going to take away that pacifier, and a part of me was just absolutely terrified to take it away. I knew that it was good for her, but I didn't know what was going to happen once I took it away. I didn't know how quickly she would learn how to sleep on her own. I didn't know how she would react to it being gone. I didn't know how much she'd cry or how hard the adjustment would be. But I knew in my mind that she would adjust and that she would get used to it, and I knew that it was good for her, but it was difficult to kind of navigate the emotions concerning that, especially if it's been years and your child has gone to bed the same way and you are just scared to take that away and do something that you know is better. Don't let that fear control your child's sleep. You really have to take your emotion out of it and just know that getting enough sleep is so good for your child. When we're sleep deprived, we're miserable. And it's the same for them. They just don't express it in the same way that we do. So I definitely recommend that if you are afraid of your child's cry and you want to try one of these sleep strategies, that you just make sure you have support from your partner, from your spouse, from a friend, from a parent, anyone who can help you break those habits. Another sleep strategy she lays out is her wake to sleep technique that we talked about a little bit. I think it was in the last chapter, chapter 6. Either that or it was chapter 5. But wake to sleep is when your child habitually wakes up at a certain time every single night or even during a nap. And that's just because of the way their sleep cycle kind of lines up to wake up at that point, and they have trouble going back to sleep. You can actually wake them up a little bit before they go back to sleep to kind of reset their sleep cycle, and then they will stop waking up habitually at that time. And this only works if your child is waking up at a time and it's literally just habitual. It's not because they're hungry, it's not because of any other reason like developmental reasons or a bad dream or anything like that. And the way you track that is if your child is woken up at that specific time at least 3 nights in a row, then that means the next night you should do wake to sleep to reset that. And when you do make changes to your child's routine, to the way you do sleep rituals and sleep routines, make sure you do them gradually, especially as your child is older. They want to feel a sense of independence, they want to feel a sense of inclusion. So if you make these changes gradually and you help them to adjust to them, you're going to get their cooperation and you're probably going to have a more successful time doing it as well. When you do make those changes, make sure you're consistent with them. It can be really hard to switch from doing one thing for years and then now you're doing a new thing. And it's just going to be worse for your child if you kind of go back between the two. So as soon as you make a change, stick with that change. Don't go back. Say, this is the new way we do things. If you've been doing something for 2 years, say you've been rocking your baby to sleep, your infant to sleep for 2 years. That's really consistent of you. So basically what she says is carry on the consistency from rocking them to sleep every single night for 2 years. And now be consistent with put down, with pick up, put down, whatever you want to call it at this age. Don't go back between the two. Don't feel like if this isn't working immediately that you need to go back to rocking. Just say, this is what we do now, and they will catch on and they will learn, and they will, especially if you're confident in it, they will pick up on your confidence and on your consistency, and they will feel safe from that, and they'll be able to better learn sleep. A huge thing she stresses at the end of this chapter as well is not to confuse comforting your child with spoiling your child. Definitely do not neglect your child. If they have a genuine cry and they need you, you can't ignore that. That is the controlled crying method that Tracy always talks about, is if you put your child in their crib and no matter what, you never go in there until the morning, even if they are crying. And that is one of the things that breaks trust. When your child does have a genuine cry, you do need to go in, you do need to comfort them. And unfortunately, you have to work hard to help them to break that habit and to be safe in their own room and to feel loved and comforted by you. But don't spoil them by going in unnecessarily, going in and giving them whatever they want. They can manipulate at this age. So if their cry is not genuine, then you can easily spoil them by giving in to those cries. If you do recognize that you are spoiling them a little bit, then you need to be more firm with that as well. The last sleep strategy she lays out is that you should just examine the way that your actions and your motives have affected your child. A lot of parents might be afraid of their child growing up. They might not really want them to have independence yet. So they may be doing something to hold them back from actually having healthy, independent sleep. especially if you are still co-sleeping at this point. You may be babying your toddler a little bit more than what they need. If you're co-sleeping because you feel like they're not old enough to have their own bed or their own room, then just be aware of that motivation that you have that's basically controlling that action. And recognize that it's probably better for your child if they learn independent sleep now, especially if you are going to have another baby on the way. I think a lot of parents at this point also are expecting their second child and recognize that the issues that they've been allowing to go on for the last few years cannot continue while they have a new baby. That kind of is a wake-up call, like, oh, I'm gonna have an actual baby. I need to stop babying my toddler. If you look back at what Tracy has said about sleep and eating, at 4 months, a baby's schedule basically totally changes. And it can be, when I say 4 months, it sounds so young, but I remember my daughter being 4 months old and me thinking, yeah, she can go 4 hours between eating. If she wakes at night, I'm not feeding her. And just being consistent with that, it can be really difficult. If you've been feeding your child at night for 2 years, they don't need to eat at night at 2 years. They don't need it at 4 months. Just be aware of the way that you've been thinking about your child's eating, about your child's sleep, and about how that's been affecting them and holding them back from becoming more independent and actually growing up. So that was essentially Tracy's whole chapter. She does end this chapter with some specific case studies for, I think it's 2 different children that she worked with that had terrible sleep habits. I really recommend that you read those studies. I am not going to go over them in this video. I do absolutely love that Tracy will talk about specific stories and specific parents that she's worked with, because it really paints a good image of what these sleep issues look like practically. And I can see these things happening with my daughter, even though she's been sleep trained. If I lose my routine, if I lose our sleep ritual, if I just let everything fall into chaos, these things will happen and they'll need to be corrected and it'll be really difficult. So don't lose hope. Read these stories, read what she has to say. She really lays it all out. She's so practical in her advice. Your child can learn to sleep and have healthy sleep habits. You just need to be willing to put in the work and put in the time to help them to do so. And even though this chapter doesn't really apply to me and it might not apply to you, I think it's a really great motivator to teach our children sleep when they're younger as well. It makes me really more empathetic with mothers who don't sleep train right away at 4 months. I know of several people who do have babies and they haven't sleep trained them and they're close to 1 year of age. And in my heart, I want to judge them and be like, I can't believe they didn't sleep train. But then when I get to read these stories of moms who really struggled with their child's sleep, I have more empathy, where I can understand where these parents might be coming from and how difficult it is to get out of these old habits. But it is possible. I hope that this video is more of an encouragement to you than anything else. I definitely don't want to lecture you here about your parenting. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave a comment down below if you have any questions or concerns or statements, or you want to share a story from how you use the Baby Whisperer. If you also have any questions about how to do things specifically that you might have read in this chapter that I didn't address, please feel free to leave those below as well. And make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date with new videos. There's only 10 chapters in this book. This is chapter 7, so we'll only have 3 more videos after this of going through every chapter, and then we'll be doing more smaller, manageable videos that cover very specific topics that Tracy talks about. So go ahead and stay subscribed so that you can be updated and notified when those videos are released. Thanks for watching!